everyone. Welcome to the Self-Awareness Journey podcast. I'm Melissa Albers.
And I'm JJ Parker. This podcast is for seekers, seekers of happiness and joy, seekers of a centered approach to success in life, seekers of their true, authentic selves.
Get ready for some real talk on everything from anxiety, emotions, and habits to love, compassion, and forgiveness. We know you'll be challenged and enlightened by this conversation. We're so glad you're here. Let's dive in.
Melissa, have you heard about the restaurant on the moon?
No.
It's got great food,
Yeah?
but no atmosphere.
Oh my gosh. Ba-dum boom. You're here till Thursday. Try the veal. Oh,
Totally.
dad joke.
You know what you should never do? Never date a tennis player.
Oh, why?
Because love means nothing to them.
Oh my God.
I've got a whole list.
No, we're good.
Are you sure? Just one more?
Okay, fine.
Okay. A Zen student asked his master, "Is it okay to use email?" "Yes," replied the master, "but with no attachments."
Okay, that one is very
Okay, that one
funny.
got you? Like the Buddhist joke got you? Okay.
Well, I just feel like that's the cookies are on the second shelf at least, not just sitting on the
That
floor.
one, okay. Well, today I want to talk about humor. I want to talk about how humor and self-awareness might intermingle with each other.
I love it. I love it. And after the week I've had, it's a great topic. I just feel sad that I didn't have a bunch of jokes because, I have a number of incredibly bad jokes that I think are hilarious. And in this moment, I can't think of one.
No, of course.
Darn it.
That's how dad jokes work. So, just before we hopped on, we were kind of chatting about humor and some of the different aspects of
Yeah,
it,
right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like obviously, I think everyone just generally likes to laugh. Right?
Yes.
We
Yes.
like using humor. We like making each other laugh. We like
feels
making
good to-
ourselves
Yeah.
laugh.
Yeah.
Right?
It feels good to be happy and laugh.
Yeah, right. It's like a sign of happiness.
Right.
So, like, I wonder why, like, laughing and telling jokes and joking around makes us happy. What do you
Yeah.
think?
I don't know, but it does. Well, sometimes, usually, I don't know. It just feels good. It's like an emotional release, sort of, like you get to laugh and you just feel like this body weight lifting, even if you're, it just feels good. It feels buoyant.
Yeah, right. It also feels like it's like a great way to connect with other people. It's like a good connector
Mm-hmm.
thing, right? When people, when there's like a joke, I mean, certainly, especially like a little inside joke between a couple of people,
Yeah, right.
right? It's like kind of like,
Yeah.
this secret little funny thing and you all share it together. It's
Right.
a real like bonding experience.
Right, right. And a lasting experience. Like it can be something that bonds you together for years. Remember
Oh,
that? Yeah,
right.
remember
Yeah.
that time?
Remember that thing that happened in high school?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it just, 30
Yeah.
years later, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think too, there's a lot of benefit to laughing and humor to make someone well, to make someone feel better. Like it's a really big part of healing.
Mhm.
If people suffer physical or mental things, humor and laughing in a good natured way can be very healing for the human psyche.
For sure. Like even actually, probably one of our very first parenting instincts
Mm.
is when our kids are sad or hurt is to try to make them laugh,
Yeah, right.
right?
Yeah, tickle them or do something to distract them with laughing.
Totally, right.
Yeah. It doesn't work very well with adults, though. You can actually get put in prison if you reach
Do
over to
not
somebody.
try to tickle your coworkers. Oh, you didn't make your sales numbers this month?
Oh,
Tickle, tickle, tickle. Yeah.
That's not weird at all. Not at all. Oh,
So, and like so many, I mean, obviously comedians, like
right.
the whole genre of
Yeah.
comedic movies and
Mhm.
sitcoms and all that,
Right.
right? We kind of like seek out
Right.
laughter and that, right?
Yeah, yeah. And in just in my life, I absolutely love laughing. I think I like laughing more than a lot of people I know. I enjoy making jokes. I like that,
Hmm.
I just am constantly looking for things that are kind of humorous. And even in my coaching, I use humor a lot in my coaching.
Okay,
A lot in my coaching.
so let's talk specifically about how you would use humor in a situation like that. Because
Mm,
when I think about your coaching,
yeah.
right? I mean, this is high end professional
Hmm.
level coaching.
Yep.
The topics, I assume, I don't sit in on your coaching calls, but
Right.
like can be pretty serious. I mean,
Yep.
right? These are people running very large organizations,
Yep.
making very important decisions that affect hundreds and thousands of people,
All the time.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And millions of dollars. So, um, how does joking around play into that scenario?
Yeah. You know what I think? It's such a good question. I think that the key is when we sit in our own heads and tell ourselves a story of what's happening, or we feel the weight of having to make heavy decisions, or we feel the weight of making a shift in something that we know is going to be unpopular. It's scary. We start to get really
Hmm.
heavy about that. It feels really stressful. And a lot of the times when I'm having those kinds of conversations, if I can help someone be slightly disarmed,
Mm,
if I can help them not be quite so serious, then they stay more open. And when you stay more open, you stay more flexible. And when you stay more flexible, you see more opportunity. So it really is I use humor a lot and in a very loving way. There's
hmm.
different kinds of humor which we should talk about. We've been talking about all the fun positive stuff. There are some situations in which humor can be negative, right? And that is not necessarily what we would want to do. So I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about sarcasm. I'm not talking
Hmm.
about,
We'll get into that in a little
yeah,
bit.
we'll get in that in a bit. But what I was going to say is just being able to disarm someone with not taking themselves or the situation
Hmm.
quite as seriously.
Yeah. Yeah. I like using humor as a disarming
Yes.
technique,
Yeah.
right?
And you do that a lot. You do that a lot. Yeah, you do.
Yeah,
It's,
I know. Well, right. Part of me, like when I think about that disarming technique, what it makes me think of is like my defense mechanism
mm-hmm.
as like a middle school kid was that, right? Like I wasn't like strong or
Mm.
popular. I was like the nerdy kid. So I was able to sort of like use humor as a way to like skate my way through the, you
Uh-huh.
know,
The
like
rat's nest, the
the
mouse
rapids
maze.
of, yeah, middle school and high school. Um, that means I'm good at it.
Okay. Okay, I heard that. Okay. I'm validating you. I bet you were so good at it.
But using humor to disarm, I mean, we do that all the time.
We
I
do.
see people doing it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it works well. And you said it makes the other person more open,
Yeah. If it's
right?
done properly, right? I mean, there needs to be a level
Hmm.
of self-awareness and emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Obviously in this space, right, where we're talking.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting when we get too much in our heads, we really do start on this path where it's like everything starts becoming super serious,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, for sure.
And then everything it gets tighter and tighter and tighter.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you start, a lot of times like don't make good decisions in that state, or you don't see at least you don't see very clearly in that
Right.
closed state, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So using something to open you up to see more clearly, and like a tool like humor is a great way to do it.
I remember one time my daughter was in like second grade and and she still is extremely artistic and can be a bit of a perfectionist. And she had to make a poster for something. And this is the day and age where a lot of parents make posters for their kids. And And I wasn't going to do that because she was way more artistic than me. And she was,
like helicopter parents are making the posters for their
that
kids.
happens
That's what you're
all the
saying.
time, right? That's another whole topic. We'll save that. But I remember specifically, she was really in a snit because the poster did not turn out like she had envisioned it. And she was really, really upset. And she had misspelled the word nose, Nose. And she was so mad about this poster. And I looked at it, and then I looked at her, and I felt my eyes getting kind of big because I was like, I don't know if she sees that misspelling. She's going to lose it, right? And I looked at it, and I looked at her, and I said, and she wasn't in the mood for any jokes. And we were running out to the bus, and I just said, well, can I just give you a little tap on your nose instead of nose? And I was like, okay, that's the closest that I'm going to get to like making a little joke and like seeing how she is. And she looked at it, and we still sometimes today will make jokes about our nose instead of our nose. So, sometimes you can, even with children, be able to disarm them enough to not take things quite so seriously and be quite so mad.
Yeah. So in a work context, you're talking about coaching, right?
Yeah.
So you're talking about trying to get your clients to open up, and you using humor as a tool to do that.
Right.
Using humor and comedy at work in like a work environment, I think is really interesting.
Yeah.
Because certainly there's different company cultures, and some are going to be much more serious, and some are going to be a bit more relaxed. But what's your experience? Like, have you seen business cultures that are very kind of like joking around a lot, and other cultures that are fairly serious, and the employees don't joke with each other?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's from the top down. However the leaders of the organization are, that really informs the rest of the organization what's okay. And those are all unspoken norms. They're not,
those
they're
are
not
like
poster norms.
Yeah, it's not like,
Yeah,
like those aren't on the core values. Like,
no,
the core values of our company joke around all the time.
Yeah.
Not
Except,
written up
what's
there.
funny? The core values of the authentic leader, one of them is humor. Isn't that funny?
Nice.
Yeah. And
That's
that
great.
was, oh my gosh, 15 years ago, maybe even that was put down.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've seen in many cultures, like, it's interesting, like, I think we should talk about the different types of humor at work, because I think that we've been talking about like the lighthearted, fun ones, but there's also a wide variety of humor in the workplace that actually is not helpful or productive. So, one of the things that I talk a lot with my leaders about in coaching is sarcasm. So a lot of leaders sort of, will think that sarcasm makes them look good. Sarcasm is an intellectual kind of humor. It shows how funny I am. But sarcasm actually is using someone else at someone else's expense to make yourself look better. And sarcasm is really, really an uncomfortable thing that has really cutting long-term effects.
Yeah, comedy is a very interesting thing like that.
Yeah.
Because it's like right on the edge. Often it's right on the edge of being
inappropriate.
Appropriate and inappropriate.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
the artist there kind of like rides that edge.
Yeah.
Someone very skilled rides that edge and knows when to not cross that line.
Right. Yeah, I think so. I mean, and I think too in the workplace, if you kind of think you're really, really funny and you're using sarcasm as your tool, I would just recommend that you maybe don't. Just don't.
Just
don't.
That's a blunt analysis.
It's a very blunt analysis, but that's one that I've seen such a long-term, and even a little bit of sarcasm, because it actually isn't a reflection on the person that you are giving a hard time to. It's a reflection on you. And people don't realize that. They think, oh, I'm making a very specific cutted comment about Joe Smith. And everybody's going to see what I see about Joe, but people just look at you and think, wow, that was uncomfortable. That was
because
mean.
a lot of times we might actually be using a joke to put someone else down and make ourselves look better.
Yeah.
So that is just more like an ego self-serving.
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah. Yep. Or you use sarcasm to communicate something that you wanted to communicate, but you don't feel comfortable enough communicating in honesty.
Yeah, it's like almost like sometimes when I see sarcasm used in that way,
Hmm.
it's more like that person's like afraid. It's
Hmm.
like I actually more feel bad for them that they're not able to like
Yeah.
really like express their true thoughts.
Yep. Yep. And that's really, really true. I see that a lot in the workplace too, when you see people making sort of sarcastic or dismissive comments, to be funny, dismissive,
Hmm.
funny comments, mostly because that person is uncomfortable. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
exactly right. Yeah. So,
yeah. There's that other part that gets a kind of humorous response
yeah.
at work that I've seen used where like someone will like take maybe somebody's argument.
Yeah.
If we're debating someone will take someone's argument and then like blow it ridiculously out of proportion,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And it's like, oh well, that's funny, but
Yeah.
but you're actually what you're actually trying to do is discredit
Right.
their
Yeah.
argument. So
Hmm.
so stop doing that because everyone's perspective is valid here, right?
Yeah.
Like
Right.
don't
Right.
use that as a technique to discredit someone else's idea.
Right. And you'll see like certain people that are very shy or introverted may use humor as a way of kind of protecting themselves, just like you were talking about when you were
Mm,
younger.
tell me more about that.
Yeah. There's a lot of, by the way, everybody, as soon as he said that, he was looking the other direction. So that was like his way of saying, don't tell me anything about this. I'll tell you about it, but I'm too introverted. So you go ahead.
Go ahead.
But a lot of people too, especially if they're more introverted or they feel anxious about the topic or usually when someone is using kind of cutting humor, it's normally because the person feels that they're not enough or they're not going to be good enough or they're not equipped for the topic or what have you. So a lot of times more quiet people will just kind of throw out like one-liners or
Hmm.
zinger. I call them zingers,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yep.
like they'll throw out a zinger to either get a little attention because that feels good, or really just in an effort to try to be part of the group without having to expend too much energy and too many words.
Yeah. Yep.
So when you
So,
see someone doing that, I always kind of ask myself, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if that person is a more introverted person or if that person is
oh, I
working
see it.
hard to be part of this group right now. That's how I think about
Yeah,
it.
that's a great perspective. Like as we try to understand other people better,
Yeah.
using that as one of the clues
Hmm.
to what might be happening
Right.
for that individual. I like that. I'm going to start noticing that.
The other thing too that I think is interesting, and you and I've talked just a little bit about this, but it's sort of the self-depreciating, like self-deprecating humor.
Self-deprecating. Yeah.
Yeah. Did I say self-depreciating? Let's get a T-shirt that
You're
says
an
that.
accountant. That's something different.
Oh, if I'm an accountant, we're in a
You're tired.
really
It's okay.
bad place in this world, people. Oh,
Yeah,
yep,
self-deprecating humor, right? So we kind of put ourselves down. Instead of putting
right.
others down, we put ourselves down, or we paint ourselves in like kind of a foolish light
Yeah, right.
to get a laugh.
Right. And I think that, if you do like using humor, that's a much safer style, but there's also an edge on that as well, right? It's like, sometimes when somebody is very confident about what they're
Hmm.
doing and they make sort of a self-deprecating comment about their skill set or whatever, it can be
Hmm.
very funny,
Yep.
because the other people are like, oh my gosh, that person is so good at that. Obviously, they're just having a little fun here. And they feel
Yeah.
safe enough in themselves to have fun by saying something like that.
Hmm.
Like that's really fun. Then that is a very safe,
Yeah. I will
lighthearted.
say though, there is a little bit of nuance in there because I have seen highly skilled people
Mm,
make self-deprecating comments about their skill,
mm.
but it comes off as arrogant because you're like, I mean,
Oh,
give me a
that's
break. Like,
interesting.
you know what I mean? Like, no, you're so good. Your little joke about how you're bad at this activity is,
Oh,
you know,
interesting.
is more like a brag to me.
Oh,
That's
that's
how sometimes it
interesting.
comes across.
Ha, that's interesting. I've never really considered it like that. I think like
Well, it
you
happens to me all the time because I'm such a highly skilled individual with self-deprecating humor. Just kidding.
uh, oh, you were? Oh, really?
Uh,
Well, Well, sometimes too, I think that's when, isn't that interesting? So when someone does self-deprecating humor, what makes it feel good and what makes it feel bad? So what you're saying is if they go too far
If you go too far,
and
it's
they're
bad.
clear, then it makes it look like it's an arrogant statement, like they're trying to
Yep.
get attention. It's like attention seeking. Whereas the kind of self-deprecating humor I was talking about is, okay, so let's say I'm in a conversation with someone and it's an emotional topic of some sort, where they're feeling vulnerable,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're having to explain something and they feel very vulnerable. And they could use an example that is very, very open. And here they are, right? They're just showing everything. They're showing all of their true feelings. And 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 we start to discuss that and I respond in kind. So I stay in that same level of openness and trust with them. But then at some point, once you sort of accomplish that goal, how do you get out of that? How do you get out of that deeper piece? And that's where I might say something like, wow, well, I am glad that I have never had to, like I can turn it back to me
right.
to make
Yep.
the whole situation a little lighter and take the brunt of that on purpose and in goodwill so that that person feels that emotional shift like, okay, Melissa's got my back. She's not going to make me stay here. She's not uncomfortable, right? She's not
Yep.
uncomfortable. She's comfortable enough with
And
me that she can
right.
even make a joke right now. And that makes
Yeah.
me feel better.
And in a way, like you'll take on a little bit of that embarrassment. You'll take on a little bit of that
Right.
vulnerability. You'll take on a bit of that for the other person. I agree. Like that kind of self-deprecating humor can be really effective, and it actually can be really effective in a leadership position.
Yes, very. Very.
Where it is about trying to support that other person
Yeah.
through, through those feelings and those thoughts that they're having.
Yeah. And it does take, it's like self-awareness is a really big part of that, because it means in order to be authentic and to use humor in this way authentically and for the good means that you have to have a level of esteem in yourself, right? It means that you have to have a level of self-worth and self-trust.
Yep.
To do that. And that comes off like crazy with other people, right? People can sense when you have that and they trust that. And then you wouldn't think that that was an arrogant piece if somebody came from that perspective.
All right. One more thing about this.
Yes.
In my notes, I wrote humor as a shield. I bet you come across this quite a bit. Do you ever come across someone who you're actually maybe even trying to get to know them, or you're actually trying to maybe get into a maybe a little bit deeper of a conversation, and they just constantly keep using humor to deflect anything any attempt to get into a deeper conversation?
Yeah, for sure I have. For sure I have. I remember this one time in particular. It was when I was in sales. I was meeting with an owner of a company and we were going somewhere together because he was going to show me a big data center, a big data room. And he was that guy where he just was a very highly analytical guy. He kind of fancied himself sort of apart from everyone else. I don't know if it was ego or introversion. I don't really know. But I just kept asking him all these questions like to try to get to know him, right?
Yeah.
And so we started talking about cars and I said, oh, well, what kind of car do you drive? Just as we were like making comments about vehicles because he had kids, and he said, sticky.
What? A sticky car?
Yeah, sticky. Because he had two little kids or whatever. But he didn't even want to, and we were walking to his car. So it wasn't like, I don't know. I don't know. I just remember that particular conversation because every question I asked, he did that.
I know you're a salesperson. So like at that moment, like your mantra is like comedy is for closers. Like,
right.
Is that a thing? I'm going to go to my sales team. Comedy is for closers. Good thing I don't run the sales team.
Yeah.
Well, but as a salesperson, part of it is you're trying to develop a relationship. You're trying to get to know this person more and get the rapport going, right? And he's absolutely blocking it at every turn using this defense mechanism.
Yeah. I see that too. I've seen that too. And it is really interesting. Gosh, when you start thinking about how humor is, and we don't have time today, but it would be fun to delve into how family dynamics create humor as well. There's a lot of, how many times have you been around friends' families that the family has such a wonderful sort of cultural norm of being lighthearted and making fun of things. And then how many times have you been in part of a family structure where things are pretty darn serious and it's really, really scary walking on eggshells just to ask to pass the potatoes, right?
I have observed this behavior given that I, work with 3 of the 4 Elbers.
Oh no. I feel exposed.
Just gotta call yourself out there. What is funny, because I don't know if everyone knows, but both your kids work in somewhere in my companies, right? So I get to come across them not every day, but every so often, and they are both so funny.
I know they
so
are
funny. And Megan in particular has got this very
sharp, fast,
very honed in brand of comedy that is unbelievable.
I know she does.
And she uses it in this work context at a mastery skill level.
Can I use an example? She's probably going to kill me. She's probably going to kill me. She was writing an email to a whole team that she works with. I'm not going to say the team. And it's a weekly report that she has to send out. And she spends a lot of time writing it. And she's 100% convinced no one reads it. She's 100% convinced. So her way of dealing with this is to not overtly ask. No, she writes the whole thing at the very bottom. Instead of writing thank you, comma, Megan, she writes, moist regards, Megan.
Just to see if anyone calls her out on it.
And no one said a word.
No one said anything.
And she nailed them the next morning. She's like, I busted every one of you. No one read that. Who signs anything? Moist regards.
That's awesome.
Oh, dear.
Well, this is a fun conversation.
Yeah.
Obviously,
I love it.
We talked a lot about work, but I agree that it would be fun to talk about sort of the norms in families and how families use humor and how just individuals married couples. I'll see married couples that use humor in a very specific way that works for them.
Yeah.
Yes. And sometimes I think well, I could never talk to my wife like that, right? But they banter back and forth, whatever. It's fun to watch.
So, in closing, knock, knock.
Who's there?
Yoda lady.
Yoda lady who... Did you enjoy this episode? Please go to your favorite podcast platform to subscribe, rate, and leave a review so others can discover it as well.
Growing self-awareness is a lifelong journey, and there's always further to go. And it's better when we're all in it together. Please think of someone you know who could benefit from hearing today's conversation and share this episode with them. We can't thank you enough for listening. Until next time, happy exploring, seekers.